It was a bright Tuesday morning when Mr. John, the owner of a prestigious hotel chain, decided to take a break from his usual busy schedule. He had been consumed with meetings, emails, and conference calls, and a visit to one of his properties was long overdue. As the head of a growing hospitality empire, he was always looking for ways to improve his businesses, but lately he had been feeling disconnected from the heart of his operations. The hotel, located in the heart of the city, was one of his flagship locations, and it had a special place in his heart. It was the first hotel he had ever opened, a project that took years of hard work and sacrifice. Now, as the business grew, it seemed like he rarely had time to visit. But today, something felt different. He woke up early, skipped his usual breakfast meeting, and decided that he would personally check in on his staff, the condition of the building, and make sure everything was running smoothly. His car pulled up to the grand entrance, and he stepped out into the crisp morning air. The sight of the tall, glass and steel building made him proud. The hotel lobby was as grand as ever, with sparkling marble floors and large chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Guests walked in and out, the hum of conversations and footsteps echoing off the walls. The concierge greeted him with a smile, and the staff all seemed busy with their daily tasks, maintaining the high standards that Mr. John had worked so hard to establish. The familiar sounds and smells of the hotel felt comforting, but there was a quiet, nagging feeling in his chest. For some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was out of place. It wasn't something he could put his finger on immediately, but the feeling grew stronger the more he walked through the corridors. The staff seemed to be going about their business, but their faces looked tense. There was a subtle unease in the air, like a quiet storm building beneath the surface. As he walked past the housekeeping area, he noticed the cleaning staff, all diligently working, their uniforms perfectly pressed and their movements synchronized, as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. His gaze shifted toward one of the women, a cleaning lady who had worked at the hotel for years. He recognized her immediately, Maria, the woman who cleaned the executive floors. She was a familiar figure, always smiling, always working with a quiet efficiency. She had been with the hotel for as long as Mr. John could remember. Today, though, there was something different about her. Maria, normally cheerful, seemed distracted, almost as if something weighed heavily on her mind. She moved slowly, carefully mopping the floor in the hallway, as if she were deep in thought. Her usually bright and welcoming expression was replaced by one that looked tired, worn, even sad. It caught Mr. John's attention. He had always been kind to Maria. In fact, he made it a point to get to know all of his staff, from the receptionists to the cleaners. He believed in maintaining personal connections with everyone, understanding that they were the backbone of his business. Over the years, he had developed a level of familiarity with all of them, including Maria. She had often shared stories of her family, her grandchildren, and the challenges she faced. But today there was something in her eyes, something Mr. John couldn't ignore. As he approached her, he felt a strange, almost magnetic pull to speak to her. He hadn't intended to stop. It was just a routine check after all. But something about her expression made him pause. He had always been able to read people well, and today he could sense that there was something she wasn't telling him. "Good morning, Maria," he said with a smile, trying to break the silence. "How's everything going today?" Maria looked up, and for a moment, her eyes met his. There was a flicker of recognition, followed by a quick glance down at the floor. She didn't respond right away, her hands still gripping the mop handle, her head slightly lowered. "It's going well, Mr. John," she replied, her voice soft, almost as if she were hesitant to speak. Just cleaning, as usual." Mr. John wasn't satisfied with the response. He had known Maria for too long to be fooled by such a simple answer. There was something in her tone, something in the way she avoided his gaze. He took a step closer. "Is everything all right, Maria?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "You seem off today." Maria paused, then sighed deeply. She set the mop down carefully, her hands shaking slightly as she placed the handle against the wall. She straightened up, her shoulders slumping, and finally met his eyes. It's nothing, Mr. John," she said quickly, her voice wavering. "Just some things on my mind. It's nothing important." But Mr. John wasn't convinced. He could see the sadness in her eyes, the weight she was carrying, and he could tell that something was bothering her deeply. This wasn't the Maria he knew, the woman who always had a smile on her face, who always took the time to chat with him when he passed by. Before he could ask more, Maria looked away and began walking down the hallway, her pace a little faster now, as if she wanted to avoid the conversation altogether. Mr. John stood there for a moment, his mind racing. Something was wrong. He didn't know what it was, but he could feel it deep in his gut. He had to find out what was going on. As he continued his walk through the hotel, the uneasy feeling didn't go away. It only grew stronger. The energy of the place, once vibrant and full of life, now felt heavy. It wasn't just the air. It was something more, something deeper. And he knew, deep down, that today was no ordinary visit. Today, he would uncover something that would change his life forever. Mr. John's routine check was about to take a turn, one that he could never have predicted. Mr. John couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As he walked through the hotel, the buzzing sounds of a typical workday seemed distant, almost muffled. It wasn't the usual hustle and bustle that he had come to expect from his thriving business. Instead, everything seemed quiet, almost as though something significant was waiting to be revealed. The strange encounter with Maria lingered in his mind. Her reluctance to talk, her uneasy expression, and the way she hurried away had left him unsettled. As much as he tried to ignore it, he couldn't help but feel a strong urge to find out what was bothering her. It wasn't like her to be so closed off. After a few more rounds through the hotel, Mr. John found himself standing at the door of the maintenance room. He had no real reason for stopping here, but something told him that Maria might be in there. His intuition was never wrong. He knocked gently, and when there was no immediate response, he turned the knob and pushed the door open. To his surprise, Maria was sitting on a wooden stool in the corner of the room, her head hung low. The moment she saw him, she stood up quickly, as if startled, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hesitation. "Maria, is everything okay?" Mr. John asked again, his voice soft yet persistent. "You don't need to hide from me. If something's bothering you, I want to know. We've known each other for years." Maria shifted uneasily, not meeting his gaze. Her fingers trembled as she wiped a tear from her cheek, and for the first time, Mr. John saw her in a light he hadn't seen before, vulnerable and fragile. I don't want to cause trouble, Mr. John," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't want you to think I'm a problem. I've been here a long time, and I'm grateful for everything this hotel has done for me. But there's something I need to tell you, something I've been keeping secret." Mr. John's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Maria? Whatever it is, you can trust me." Maria looked up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. She took a deep breath, clearly trying to muster the courage to speak the words that had been weighing on her for so long. "I wasn't always a cleaning lady here," she began slowly, her voice growing quieter with each word. I used to be someone very different. I used to be a mother, Mr. John. A mother who had to let go of her child." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Mr. John wasn't sure if he had heard her correctly. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just said. A mother, what did she mean? "You see," Maria continued, her voice now trembling, "I gave birth to a little boy many years ago, but circumstances were difficult. I wasn't in a position to care for him, and I had no choice but to give him up for adoption." Mr. John stood frozen, his mind whirling. The room seemed to spin around him as he tried to process her words. His thoughts were clouded with confusion, but one thing was certain. He couldn't understand why Maria was telling him this now, after all these years. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "What does this have to do with me?" Maria took a shaky breath, her eyes welling up with tears. She looked up at him, the weight of her emotions clear in her expression. He stood up from his desk and walked to the large window, looking out at the city below. The skyline that had once seemed so vibrant now felt distant, as though he was seeing it through a fog. He thought about his childhood, the memories that he held dear, the laughter, the family holidays, the sense of belonging. But now, those memories felt tainted, incomplete. How could he reconcile the life he had known with the life he had never lived? How could he come to terms with the fact that the woman he had thought of as a stranger, as a mere hotel employee, was actually the woman who had given him life? That night, Mr. John lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced as he replayed the events of the past few days. His thoughts kept returning to Maria's tear-streaked face, the pain in her eyes as she confessed the truth. He knew she had never wanted to hurt him, but the weight of her secret had been too much for her to bear. And yet it didn't make the truth any easier to accept. He had always believed that everything in his life had happened for a reason, that his adoptive parents had been the ones meant to raise him. But now, with the truth staring him in the face, he questioned everything. Was his entire life built on a foundation of falsehoods? The conflicting emotions churned inside him. Anger, confusion, sadness, and guilt. He felt angry at Maria for keeping the truth from him, yet he also understood her reasons. He felt guilty for the anger he had toward her, knowing that she had only acted out of love and fear, and he felt immense sadness for both Maria and himself. For all those years, he had been living a life that wasn't fully his, unaware of the mother who had given him up. He had been living with one truth, while the real truth had been hidden from him for so long. In the days that followed, Mr. John found himself avoiding Maria. He couldn't face her. He didn't know how to act around her anymore. Every time he saw her in the hotel, cleaning the hallways, his heart ached. He couldn't look at her without feeling the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. He wanted to confront her, to ask her why she hadn't told him sooner, but every time he tried to find the words, they got stuck in his throat. His adoptive mother noticed the change in his behavior. She saw the tension in his face, the way he seemed distant and preoccupied. One evening, after a long day at the hotel, she sat him down in the living room of their home. "You've been avoiding Maria, haven't you?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "I can see it in your eyes. You've been thinking about everything she told you, haven't you?" Mr. John shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know what to feel anymore," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I spent my whole life thinking that you were my real parents, and now I find out that someone else, someone I've known for years, is my real mother. How am I supposed to process that? How do I go back to my normal life after learning something like that?" His adoptive mother sighed, her face softening with understanding. "I know this is hard, John, but what you have to understand is that Maria never wanted to hurt you. She's carried that pain with her every day, watching you from a distance, hoping you'd live a better life. She's your mother in every way that matters, but so am I. I've loved you just as much as any biological mother could. This doesn't change that." Mr. John sat in silence, his heart heavy with the truth of her words. He realized then that this was not a choice between his adoptive parents and Maria. He didn't have to choose. His love for both of them didn't need to be divided. They had both played an important role in his life, and they always would. The emotional conflict raged on inside him. But in that moment, Mr. John realized that healing would come with time. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. His life, his past, and his future could still be filled with love, even if it was a love he hadn't expected. It was a love that transcended bloodlines, a love built on sacrifice, understanding, and the bond between a mother and her child. The journey was just beginning. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional storm inside Mr. John slowly began to settle, but it wasn't over yet. The weight of the past and the shock of the revelation still lingered in his heart. It felt like a constant tug-of-war between his past and his present, between the life he had known and the truth he had discovered. He had so many questions, but he knew that some answers would only come with time. Mr. John had avoided Maria for the past few weeks, too afraid to face her and too unsure of how to navigate this new reality. But the silence was starting to gnaw at him. He realized he couldn't go on pretending that everything was normal when his heart was heavy with unresolved emotions. The more he thought about it, the more he understood that this wasn't just about him. It was about Maria too. She had been living with this secret for years, and it was time to face the truth together, as mother and son. One morning, after a sleepless night of tossing and turning, Mr. John decided that he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to speak to Maria, to try and heal the wound that had been left open for so long. With a deep breath, he made his way to the maintenance room where he knew she would be. His heart raced as he approached the door, his palms clammy with nervousness. As he knocked gently on the door, Maria looked up from her work, her eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, they both stood there in silence, unsure of what to say. Mr. John could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear he had seen the day she revealed the truth to him. She had been waiting for him to make the first move, and now, here he was, ready to face what they both had been avoiding. "Maria," he began, his voice steady but soft, "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me. I don't know if I'm ready to fully understand everything yet, but I know that I can't keep running from this. I need to talk to you. I need to know you, not just as the cleaning lady at my hotel, but as my mother, the mother I never knew." Maria's face softened as tears welled up in her eyes. She had expected him to be angry, to turn away, but instead, she saw something that brought hope to her heart, a willingness to understand, to bridge the gap that had existed between them for so long. "Mr. John, John," she whispered, the name feeling foreign but comforting on her lips, "I never wanted you to feel confused or hurt. I've carried this secret for so long, and all I've ever wanted was for you to be happy. You had a good life, and I was afraid that if you knew the truth, it would shatter everything. But I see now that keeping this secret, it's been holding both of us back." Mr. John stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His heart ached for her, for the pain she had carried silently for so many years. The weight of his own anger and confusion began to fade, replaced by empathy and understanding. It was clear to him now that Maria hadn't kept this secret to hurt him. She had kept it because she loved him, and in her love, she had made the most difficult decision of her life. She had given him up to give him a better future. "I understand," Mr. John said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't pretend to know what it's like to give up your child, but I do know that it must have been the hardest thing you ever did. And I also know that you did it out of love. I've been angry, confused, but now, I'm just grateful. Grateful that you're here now, that we can finally be honest with each other." Maria wiped her tears, a small bittersweet smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'm sorry, John," she said softly. "I should have told you sooner. I should have been braver. I should have fought harder for you, but I was so afraid. Afraid of losing you again." Mr. John shook his head gently. "You didn't lose me, Maria. Not really. I've always been a part of you, even when I didn't know it. And now that I know the truth, nothing changes how I feel about you. You are my mother, and nothing will ever take that away." For the first time in weeks, Maria's face relaxed. The tension that had built up between them slowly began to dissolve. The years of separation, the silence, and the distance were all starting to feel like a bad dream that was finally coming to an end. She had feared that her revelation would create a rift that could never be repaired, but instead, it had opened a door to healing. "John, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry for everything," Maria whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't hurt me," Mr. John replied, his voice steady but full of warmth. "You gave me life. You gave me a future. And now we get to build something together, something that's ours. In that moment, they both knew that this was just the beginning of their journey. They would have to navigate the complicated terrain of their new relationship, but the foundation was solid: love, forgiveness, and understanding. Mr. John reached out, gently taking Maria's hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. The years of longing, confusion, and hurt were finally being replaced with a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of reconciliation. "I don't know what the future holds," Mr. John said, his voice calm and reassuring, "but I do know that we're in this together now, and I'm not going anywhere." Maria smiled, her heart swelling with a love that had been dormant for far too long. "I never stopped loving you, John. I never stopped thinking about you, and now I have a second chance. We both do." As they stood there, hand in hand, in the quiet maintenance room of the hotel, it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off their shoulders. The years of separation had been long and painful, but in that moment, they knew that they had found each other again. It wasn't the ending they had expected, but it was the one they needed. And together, they would face whatever came next, stronger than ever before.